Elaine Porter was not a woman who frightened easily. After 15 years as a psychiatric nurse at St. Mary's Hospital, she'd seen every kind of broken mind you could imagine. Schizophrenics who screamed at the walls, addicts crawling through withdrawal, patients who had long since forgotten their own names. But there was something different about room 413. It was supposed to be empty. The West Wing had been closed since the fire 3 years ago. Faulty wiring, they'd said. 5 patients dead, the wing condemned, and all records sealed up tight. No one was allowed down there anymore. And yet, last Tuesday night, just after 2 a.m., Elaine was doing her rounds when she heard it. A whisper. She stopped in the hallway outside the wing. It was faint, like someone mumbling through a closed door. She pressed her ear to the charred wood. Definitely a voice. Male. Soft, almost melodic. Elaine. Her name. She staggered back. The door to 413 was ajar. Just slightly. But enough. The corridor lights flickered, a single bulb buzzing above her. She should have left, reported it, gone back to the station. But her hand moved on its own, fingers brushing the blackened doorknob. Inside, the room was dark, untouched since the fire. Smoke stains crawled up the walls. The bed frame sat half-melted. And in the corner, a figure. Thin. Pale. Sitting cross-legged. A boy, maybe 17. He looked up. "Hello again," he said. Elaine's knees nearly buckled. She hadn't seen that face in 3 years. Not since the fire. "Daniel," she whispered. The boy smiled. "You left me here." Then he vanished. She stayed late after her shift, something she rarely did these days. The other nurses had gone home hours ago. The halls were quieter than usual, no clatter of gurneys, no echo of distant crying. Just the hum of fluorescent lights and the low whir of machines. Elaine sat in the back of the records room, a windowless space stacked floor to ceiling with locked file drawers. Her ID badge barely opened half of them, but she had a master key. She'd never used it. Until now. She found the 2019 fire incident file. A thick folder, nearly bursting. Photos, transcripts, autopsy reports. She sifted through the names of the deceased. Catherine Mills, 58, burned in bed. Omar Patel, 36, asphyxiation. Derek Swain, 42, severe burns. Lisa Trenor, 29, died en route. Unidentified male, found in room 413. Elaine's blood ran cold. Unidentified? She remembered Daniel. Schizophrenic. Paranoid delusions. He'd been in room 413 for 6 months before the fire. She remembered his soft voice, the drawings he'd make, circles within circles, always in red crayon. But here, in the file, he wasn't mentioned by name. Not once. She searched the patient logs. Nothing under Matheson, Daniel. No intake form. No progress notes. No discharge. No death. It was like he had never existed. Elaine leaned back, heart pounding. Had she imagined him? A patient that never was? No. She remembered his eyes too well. She shoved the file shut and locked the drawer. When she turned to leave, she froze. The hallway lights were off. But far down the corridor, in the dark, room 413's door stood wide open again. Elaine slammed her apartment door behind her and leaned against it, chest heaving. It was 4:15 a.m. The silence in her apartment felt wrong, too silent, like even the city outside had gone mute. She hadn't told anyone what she'd seen. Who would believe her? A boy she knew was dead had appeared in a room that didn't even officially exist anymore. A room that opened itself. Elaine didn't sleep that night. She kept the drawings in a sealed envelope, locked inside her closet. But she couldn't stop thinking about them. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the red circles. Endless spirals, twisting inward. Always inward. Always leading to that same burned door. She called in sick the next morning, something she hadn't done in years. The hospital receptionist didn't question it. Her voice cracked when she said, "I'm not feeling well," and maybe they heard something in her tone. Something too real to argue with. By noon, she was back at her kitchen table, sorting through everything she'd collected. The photos from the fire. The forum post. The mystery file. The red crayon drawings. Her old patient journal from 2019. She flipped through the journal slowly, page by page. There he was. Daniel Matheson. Notes in her handwriting. Descriptions of his behavior. Exact times and dates. Patient speaks in whispers to unseen presences. Refuses medication, but calm. Claims they won't let him sleep. Draws compulsively, spirals, doorways, faces with mouths stitched shut. And then she saw something that made her stomach lurch. One entry was crossed out. Not by her. A thick black marker had blotted out an entire page, an entry dated October 11, 2019. She remembered writing that day. She remembered it vividly. Daniel had had an episode that afternoon. He'd clawed at his own skin, screaming that the man in the wall was coming. She had written it all down. But now it was gone. Only one word remained under the black ink, just a faint outline, almost missed. Listen. A knock on her door made her jump so hard she knocked the scotch glass onto the floor. She crept to the peephole. Nobody. The hallway outside her apartment was empty. But just as she turned to walk back, she saw it, slipped under her door. A drawing. Fresh. Still smudged. Red crayon. Her apartment. Her standing at the window. Behind her, the same door. Room 413. But this time, it was open. And something was stepping out. Its face was wrong. No eyes. No mouth. Just skin stretched over bone. But worst of all, the circles were back. Swirling all around it. The handwriting scrawled at the bottom simply read, "You're already inside." She poured a double scotch into a chipped glass and sat at her kitchen table, staring at the ceiling. Then she opened her laptop and typed a name she hadn't said aloud in years, Daniel Matheson. Nothing. No obituaries. No school records. No missing persons reports. Nothing even in the hospital's archived press releases about the fire. It was like he'd been scrubbed from existence. And then, just as she was about to close the tab, a new result popped up. A forum post, buried on an old mental health caregiver message board. Room 413, St. Mary's Hospital, NYC. Posted, October 17, 2021. By user, deleted. If anyone here remembers the fire, you probably remember the patient who didn't exist. I was a tech there in 2019. Room 413 wasn't supposed to be occupied. But it was. We all knew him. Quiet kid. Drew things. They never added him to the system. No wristband. No meds. Just a room. They said it was a clerical error, but the fire started in his room. I saw it. He didn't scream. He just stood there. Watching. Then he vanished. Elaine's hand trembled. She printed the post and folded it into her journal. The next day, she went back to the hospital and found something even worse. A file. Locked in a box labeled 413 inside a dusty supply closet. It wasn't supposed to be there. She used her master key and opened it. Inside were drawings. Hundreds of them. All in red crayon. Circles inside circles. And a face. A boy's face, thin, pale, eyes wide and black. Written on the back of each sheet, in a trembling scrawl. I'm still here. Elaine flipped to the last page. It was a drawing of her. Standing at the end of a burned hallway. Behind her, a door opening. And a voice scribbled in red across the bottom. You left me behind, but I never left you. Elaine didn't sleep that night. She kept the drawings in a sealed envelope, locked inside her closet. But she couldn't stop thinking about them. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the red circles. Endless spirals, twisting inward. Always inward. Always leading to that same burned door. She called in sick the next morning, something she hadn't done in years. The hospital receptionist didn't question it. Her voice cracked when she said, "I'm not feeling well," and maybe they heard something in her tone. Something too real to argue with. By noon, she was back at her kitchen table, sorting through everything she'd collected. The photos from the fire. The forum post. The mystery file. The red crayon drawings. Her old patient journal from 2019. She flipped through the journal slowly, page by page. There he was. Daniel Matheson. Notes in her handwriting. Descriptions of his behavior. Exact times and dates. Patient speaks in whispers to unseen presences. Refuses medication, but calm. Claims they won't let him sleep. Draws compulsively, spirals, doorways, faces with mouths stitched shut. And then she saw something that made her stomach lurch. One entry was crossed out. Not by her. A thick black marker had blotted out an entire page, an entry dated October 11, 2019. She remembered writing that day. She remembered it vividly. Daniel had had an episode that afternoon. He'd clawed at his own skin, screaming that the man in the wall was coming. She had written it all down. But now it was gone. Only one word remained under the black ink, just a faint outline, almost missed. Listen. A knock on her door made her jump so hard she knocked the Scotch glass onto the floor. She crept to the peephole. Nobody. The hallway outside her apartment was empty. But just as she turned to walk back, she saw it, slipped under her door. A drawing. Fresh. Still smudged. Red crayon. Her apartment. Her standing at the window. Behind her, the same door. Room 413. But this time, it was open. And something was stepping out. Its face was wrong. No eyes. No mouth. Just skin stretched over bone. But worst of all, the circles were back. Swirling all around it. The handwriting scrawled at the bottom simply read. You're already inside. Elaine returned to the hospital the next night, not to work, but to investigate. She wore her scrubs to avoid suspicion. Slid in quietly through the staff entrance. Security had grown lax over the years. The west wing was still sealed off with yellow tape, the hallway leading there dimmer than the rest of the hospital. As if even the lights refused to shine where the fire had touched. She carried a flashlight in one hand and a crayon drawing in the other. It felt ridiculous, like something a child might clutch during a thunderstorm. But she needed it. It felt like her only anchor to reality. The hallway leading to room 413 hadn't changed in 3 years. Burned walls. Smoke-streaked ceiling. The air was still tinged with that sickly, metallic staleness that fire leaves behind, a scent that never quite fades. Her flashlight flickered as she reached the door. Room 413 was closed this time. Elaine reached out, hand trembling, and touched the knob. Cold. Freezing cold. Then it turned on its own. She gasped and jerked her hand back. The door slowly creaked open. Inside, the room was no longer burned. No soot, no blackened walls. Instead, it was pristine. Like the fire had never touched it. The bed was made. The lights worked. And a clipboard sat neatly at the foot of the bed. Elaine stepped in. Patient, Daniel M. Date admitted, October 11, 2019. Diagnosis, unknown. See below. She flipped the page. There were only 2 notes written in bold red marker. Patient does not belong here. He never left. Behind her, the door slammed shut. The light above her fizzled and died. Elaine's breath fogged in the sudden cold. From the corner of the room, a whisper curled up through the silence. Elaine. You came back. She turned slowly. Daniel stood in the corner. Or what was left of him. His face was blurred, features shifting. Like her mind couldn't quite process what she was seeing. Why did you leave me? He asked, voice calm, as if asking about the weather. I didn't, she whispered. You forgot, he said. They made you forget. She backed toward the door. He raised one arm, impossibly long fingers twitching at the tips. You need to remember. Elaine lunged for the door, and it opened easily this time. She fled into the hall, heart pounding. But the moment she crossed the threshold, everything behind her was burned again. Blackened. Charred. She looked back, and room 413 was empty. Just smoke and ash. Just like it had always been. Elaine spent the next 2 days digging through old staff lists. She needed to find someone, anyone, who had worked on her floor during the fire in 2019. Someone who might remember Daniel. Someone who could tell her she wasn't losing her mind. Most of them had transferred. Retired. A few had passed away. But one name stood out. Marvin Gilroy, an orderly who used to mop the night floors, had always seemed invisible to most of the nursing staff. Quiet, polite, never involved in drama. He'd been there the night of the fire. Elaine remembered seeing him wheeling carts between the wings, always humming some half-forgotten jazz tune under his breath. She tracked him down through a friend in HR. He'd retired 6 months ago and moved upstate to live with his niece. Elaine drove out that same night. Marvin opened the door with a limp and a cane, his eyes tired but clear. He didn't seem surprised to see her, just wary. You remember me? She asked. Marvin studied her. Yeah. Nurse Porter. You worked 2B. Night shifts. You still there? Elaine shook her head. I need to ask you something about the fire. Marvin didn't move. I was hoping I'd never hear about that again, he muttered. I need to know if you remember a patient named Daniel. Daniel Matheson. Room 413. At that, Marvin turned pale. He stepped aside, motioned for her to come in. They sat in a cluttered living room, the TV on mute, an old clock ticking far too loudly. I remember the boy, Marvin said. We all did. Nobody admitted him. No one discharged him. He just showed up. They said he was a misfile. That psych had assigned him without protocol. But you saw him? Oh, I saw him. Pale as paper. Never spoke to me. Just sat in his room drawing. Never ate. Never slept. I once came in to mop and found the whole floor of his room covered in spirals. Circles on every inch of tile. In crayon. No idea where he even got that many. Elaine swallowed hard. Do you remember the night of the fire? Marvin nodded slowly. Place went up fast. But 413, it was different. I was there when it started. No spark. No wires. That room just caught. Like the air itself turned black. He leaned forward. I saw him in the flames, Nurse Porter. Standing. Watching. Not burning. Just staring. Like he wanted to see who would stay. Elaine's hands began to shake. He said I left him. Marvin looked at her sharply. Then he remembers you too. Elaine began having the dream again. It started like the others, her standing in the burned corridor, barefoot, the air full of ash and static. Room 413 always loomed ahead, its number flickering in and out of sight like a dying pulse. But now the dream had changed. Now, she opened the door. And inside wasn't the hospital. It was a black space. No walls. No ceiling. No floor. Just endless dark. And floating in the center, a bed. The same hospital bed from room 413. Except now, it was clean. White sheets. Crisp corners. And Daniel lying there. He stared at her. Eyes open. Not blinking. Not breathing. Whispers circled her. Echoes of her own voice. You knew. You always knew. He never belonged here. You gave him to them. She woke drenched in sweat, screaming. Her neighbors banged on the walls. She didn't care. She couldn't stop shaking. She pulled out the envelope again, the one filled with Daniel's drawings. Spread them across the floor. Dozens of spirals, doorways, stitched mouths, empty faces. In the center of them all, her face again. Drawn in red. Always red. But now there was something new. One of the drawings had changed. It wasn't like that before, she was certain. The lines were too fresh. This one showed her asleep in bed. And standing at the foot of her mattress, Daniel. Or something like him. The face was wrong. Stretched. Empty. The spirals behind him moved when she didn't look directly at them. Her hands began to shake so violently that she dropped the page. Suddenly, her phone buzzed. An unknown number. Just a single message. Stop remembering. Elaine dropped the phone and ran to the bathroom. She splashed cold water on her face, stared into the mirror. But her reflection was off. Behind her, just for a split second, a door. Not part of her apartment. A hospital door. Room 413. When she turned around, there was nothing there. But she heard it again. That same soft whisper. You opened the door. You let me out. Elaine didn't go into work for the rest of the week. The hospital left 2 voicemails, polite but concerned. She didn't return the calls. Instead, she surrounded herself with every piece of evidence she had, the drawings, the incident reports, the blacked-out journal, and that one horrible forum post that had been deleted the day after she printed it. But the worst of it was the realization that kept pushing its way forward, no matter how hard she tried to suppress it. She hadn't forgotten Daniel. She had lied to herself about him. And now, that lie was unraveling. Back in 2019, she had known he wasn't in the system. No chart, no admission records. She'd noticed it immediately, every nurse did. But she hadn't reported it. Because when Daniel came to the ward, patients stopped screaming at night. The woman in 415, who used to throw feces at the walls, went completely silent. The man in 407, who claimed demons lived in his teeth, began praying to Daniel like a priest. No one questioned it. Because things got better. Until they got worse. Until that final night, when the spirals appeared in every room. When the walls began to sweat. When the screams returned, not from the patients, but from the staff. And then the fire. Elaine had made a decision. She locked his door and didn't open it. He had begged her. Whispered through the crack, voice hoarse and scared. He wasn't a monster then, just a terrified boy. Please, he'd said. They're coming. I don't want to go with them. And she had turned away. The fire began 3 minutes later. Now, 6 years later, she saw it for what it was. She had chosen herself. And whatever Daniel had become, it was her fault. The phone rang again. No caller ID. She answered. Silence. Then, a voice she hadn't heard since the fire. Do you remember now? Elaine tried to speak, but the words caught in her throat. The voice continued. Good. That means I can come back. She dropped the phone. The walls began to hum. Outside her apartment window, the streetlight blinked twice, then stayed off. And on her living room floor, every single red spiral began to move. Elaine ran. She didn't know where she was going, just away. Her apartment seemed to breathe as she left, like the building itself had been waiting for her to remember. Waiting for her to open the door inside her own mind. She didn't grab her keys. Didn't take her phone. She just ran barefoot into the street, night air sharp against her face. She didn't stop until she reached the hospital. It loomed